Clark, thanks for joining me today. We're talking about a topic. I don't know if it's near and dear to my heart, but it's something that I see over and over and over and over again. And so I thought I had spent, I don't know, about a week or two thinking about how could I write an article on this topic. Couldn't really come up with I know all the pieces of it, but I couldn't put it together in an article. And I thought, I'll just do a video. My video editor was on vacation, so I didn't have an easy solution to get the video edited. But then I thought, why? I know Clark deals with this too. He's working with the same types of clients I am. He's got enough experience in the industry to know this is a recurring situation. And so maybe he could speak intelligently about it, and we would just have a conversation. Because again, we see this every single year. So, Clark, do you want to give a quick, for anybody who doesn't know who you are, and that's probably nobody on the planet, do you want to give a quick bio on yourself, bio and background?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's required. I don't like to, but Klark Brown, the founder and principal of a group of a coaching and mentoring consulting agency called Restoration Advisors, that we do just that. We help restorers, the disaster recovery, whatever you want to call them, be more successful in their business with the business acumen. There's a lot of places that focus on the
Mm-hmm.
technical and how to dry and how to clean. We find that oftentimes it's the things they don't teach in ICRC classes, the things you barely learn or at all in college, and usually it just comes with time, and that's business and how to run a business, grow a business, scale it, make critical strategic decisions and whatnot. So we have a group that has some program-oriented things that we have really strict follow a program to kind of build upon a system, and then we just have some lower level generalized. We're here when you need us for those difficult conversations, middle of the night, emails from adjusters, employee problems or whatever. So we kind of fill a couple of different roles, but we basically just want to be uh,
Hmm.
a little bit of a help to help this industry get better by having better, more strong and stable companies that can last through the things that we're talking about today, which are slumps and dips in this industry has them. This is a roller coaster. Some of it self-inflicted, but there are some very, very, very strong things that cause slumps. You and I want everyone to know it at home or in the truck or on their way to a moisture mapping inspection where this comes from. And this is, the John and I, we could probably do a monthly stable thing like this. We could do something. We always have conversations about realizations that turn into like a sitting on a
Mm-hmm.
tailgate talking about it. And sometimes we'll say, let's pause. This is something that others need to hear. There's
Mm-hmm.
no need to keep this internalized because I think what we are saying, we're not only talking about the problem, but we were mentioning some results and solutions. So I think that that's what brings everybody here today.
Right.
So yeah, I appreciate you having me on and finding the time to put this together because I do think it's valuable.
Well, it certainly is, and you're absolutely right. A lot of our conversations are, we're trying to fix stuff. I think it's what, how men are wired. We see a problem and we want to fix it. And unfortunately, not all of my clients and probably not many of your clients can actually recognize the problem that they're dealing with. They know something's broken, but they can't quite pinpoint, where the leak's coming from. And we're on the outside. We're not, emotionally, financially tied to the system, and so we can, unfortunately, armchair quarterback a little bit and go, yeah, that's the problem. And here are a couple different ways you can fix it. Now it's just a matter of implementation. I like that you said self-inflicted. I made notes and I spell inflicted wrong, but um, you're absolutely right. When it comes to slumps, and that's the topic, and obviously I'm going to have slumps in giant font over the thumbnail of the video, but um, first, I'll circle back. You always sell your experience short, and I know you do that because that's who you are. And you don't like talking about yourself, but um, decades of experience in both large loss, catastrophic event, now residential, and really taking a small business. sort of going into it, talking to them straight, setting up systems and processes, and then holding them accountable to use those systems consistently.
Yeah.
And in the companies that I'm aware of where you have done that, we have seen amazing results. Um, so anyway, that's the last
You
plug for Restoration
let
Advisors.
me
I
add there.
think I plug you on just about every call.
Let me add this to
Mm-hmm.
that. So like everybody else, I am doing what I'm doing because I used to be in the role of the people that I coach with. I wish I would have had
Mm-hmm.
trustable, sound, sage advice and mentorship and guidance before. I think that a lot of teachers, a lot of educators, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of consultants say the same thing. And I just don't think that it's one of those things where you don't recognize the value of people, and I hate to say this, flattening the curve. I know that term has been really politicized, but if you
Not a huge
we
fan.
we know that success is a journey, but if you can find shortcuts, if you can find things that speed that up, whatever it is you're after, whether it's freedom, whether it's financial, whether it's something else, that comes quicker. And as a now 52-year-old man, there's a lot of things that I would have done different in the past had I known the things I know now. I think there's a Bob Seger song that says that. But yeah, I think that what we do is it's consultants are an important part of this industry. There's a lot of different viewpoints about consultants because there are a lot of snake oil. There's a lot of shade tree. There's a lot of people who say a lot of things that don't really say anything.
Yep.
But I'll say this to what I usually share with my customers, John, and this is going to support a lot of the things we talk about. It business generally is business. It doesn't matter if you're in restoration, in pest control, selling fidget spinners. There are some common, time-tested, generational, capitalist-driven business functions that exist. And we start to think that what we do is so different that we don't have time, space, capacity to do those things. And we would be wrong because those very things that we're avoiding doing, this is where I sound like a consultant, the things you avoid doing are causing the symptoms and problems you're having to some degree. So
Yep.
it takes everyone has a bottom. Everyone has a certain breaking point or a top, whatever you want to call it, where you just say, I've wrestled with my ego, I've wrestled with my experience, and I've gone as far as I can. And I'm watching people, and I love this one. I'm watching people less talented than me in a lot of different ways succeed quicker, faster, better. And that's just not good. So, what do I have to do to sharpen my pencil,
I,
sharpen the
I
axe, hit it with a spear? Yeah.
I literally heard that a week ago. A a great client, fairly new to the business, but a little envious
Yeah.
of a competitor in his market who's even newer, who seems to be just killing it.
Yeah.
And the reality is we don't know. You're hearing rumor and you're drawing conclusions, but we don't know if he's profitable. He could be driving himself to bankruptcy.
Yeah.
We just don't know a lot of things. But the temptation is this guy who doesn't do as a good of a job as I do, who's newer to the scene than I am, is doing all
Yeah.
this work and making all this money.
And I think
So I
it's
hear it all
fair
the
to
time.
this
So
is
thanks for
this is where we say comparison is the enemy of joy, but we all do it. We look at models around us
no.
to measure ourselves. It's just human nature. We try not to copy and paste, but it's important to know where you stand in the market because we have to fit in. We have to be relevant. We have to be aware of what the customer's needing. So the last thing I would say as we move into slumps, John,
Mhm.
and you mentioned it, is the question a lot of people have or the identity that they possess is this must be me. It must be something I'm doing.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you right now, generally, when we're talking about slumps, especially seasonal, economic, or whatever, everybody's dealing with it. I talk to a lot of restorers, like you do,
Mhm.
and it's second quarter. We're recording this in 2024. The second quarter was dismal, and everyone was flat in a slump, and it's leading into the summer, which is when we're
Mhm.
recording this. So, but it feels like we're the only ones, and that's who was most important to us, is us and our business and those that work for us. but there is a little bit of grace that you've got to give yourself, saying that this is probably not completely self-inflicted, and I just need to find some solutions, which is what we're hoping
Hmm.
to deliver today, to some ideas, some inspiration. So,
Well, we're going to touch on self-inflicted, but yes, here's how I'll frame it. Um, in 2010, I worked for a national, technically an international, restoration franchise system. And at the time, Google was a fairly new company, but they were already dominating search, obviously. The system I worked for they were really one of the first, probably the first franchise system where most of their business was based around internet leads and primarily paid internet leads, pay per click. SEO didn't really, in our system, really wasn't a thing till much later. But we're in Los Angeles for our annual convention, and we have two or three folks from Google. I don't know if they were from the Mountain View office or from an LA office, but they came and they presented. And back in the day, Google would give you a lot of data, a lot of historical data. You could plug in a keyword and you could see exactly how many searches were performed for that keyword over the past calendar year. Little by little, Google has taken away some of some of this data, some of these tools, because I believe they want to make the paid ad space far more murkier, so that you just throw more money at it and your problems are solved. But they came prepared with a group of water damage related terms and a group of mold remediation related terms. And we looked at, it was 2 or 3 years of data on search. Wouldn't you know, July and the first 2 weeks of August, it was the slowest time of the year for both sets of those terms. And there was probably 50 or 60 different variations of water damage repair or something like that. And same for mold. But July and August, that 6 week period, so July, first 2 weeks of August, the slowest search impression time of the year, and at the same time, the most expensive time of the year to actually advertise. Because when this chaos business that we're in, there is consistency in chaos. When this industry gets slow, that's when everybody else is slow. They all kind of panic. They throw more money into advertising, and it naturally makes advertising for what we do more expensive. So when it's slow, your cost is going to be higher to advertise. It's how it works. So that data has not changed in the 15 years or 14 years since. It has been the same pattern every single year. Yes, occasionally you'll have some freak storm in the Midwest in early August. You'll have something, late June, early July, somewhere in the country. Heck, it snowed in July in Idaho. So weather is weather. It changes all the time, consistently. And so every year we're going to have little pockets of things pop up. But I know from 15 years of looking at the data from this side of the business, okay, I know July, first 2 weeks of August is going to be slow. Now that's one column, right? That we can check the box on. We know those 6 weeks are going to be slow every single year without fail. Election years are also very slow, right? We've seen this since I've been paying attention, and I've heard plenty from '08. Saw it in 2012, saw it in 2016, saw it in 2020. Election years bring out some form of buyer hesitancy. It's sort of like an apprehension leading up to an election of what's going to happen, how is this going to impact my life? And there just seems to be some buyer hesitancy every election year. Certainly, when you look at the '08, '09 housing crash,
right.
that created some great uncertainty in the market. We were coming off an election year. And then it wasn't a couple of years before we really, really turned it around. A lot of new folks came into the business. A lot of general contractors and plumbers became, and realtors became restorers. After that, that big change in the economy, But it took a couple of years to really get back. That election year, '08, probably had a bigger impact. But we've got an election year that we're in, right? And then we're also dealing with record inflation, poor economy. So we sort of have three strikes against us going into 2024. The election year, the economy, inflation. Oh, and we're in this sort of abyss of the slow summer months that we know happens every single year. So those are the non self-inflicted reasons why we're in a slump. And we'll get into, well, how can we ride this out better? Because a lot of companies don't. But that's what I've identified as the why we find ourselves in the position that we do, a very, very soft second quarter going into third quarter. And you're right, a lot of those factors not self-inflicted.
Yeah.
So I guess that's kind of the good news.
It is.
We know this is going to happen.
Yeah.
What are you seeing similar things in
All,
with your clients? Are they
all, all
saying
that.
a lot of the same stuff?
All that's true. Whether they see it or not, the economic impact is big. The apprehension. We're seeing a lot more estimates written. We're seeing a lot more people that might be. Now, this is sans. This is omitting severely traumatic large fires, complete floods. We're
Right.
talking. I would say most people that might be watching this are smaller to medium-sized companies where your $5 to $8 to $12,000 water damages sometimes are limited to one room and aren't overtly like flooded, 2 feet up water and stuff like that. These are just ice makers. These are plumbing, building envelopes, and something like that. So the economy plays into it. I've always said the economy doesn't actually have to be going down. It's just a fear that it might be. If the media starts talking about it, if a
Mm-hmm.
politician or something starts to use, John and I would say propaganda for their own needs. Okay, you need funding. I get texts and emails 5 times a week. Do you need funding for your business? I don't know where they got my
Yeah.
information, but it's out there. So there are people making money on that, and that creates a frenzy, internalization of I have some money in the bank put away for a rainy day. I think I need to hold on to it. This is probably when I'm going to need it. They start
Mm-hmm.
prioritizing what is an emergency and what's
Hesitancy.
not. Hesitancy. They start prioritizing
Right. And
what's an emergency.
the argument I've heard against this concept of buyer hesitancy as it relates to restoration is, but it's a water damage or it's a sewage backup. They have to get help, and no, they don't. They call their Uncle Bob. They call a neighbor, or they go hire labor at a Home Depot or a Lowe's, and they DIY it. If I know that I can save, most people don't know how their homeowner's policy works. Then you also have insurers pulling out of states completely. Folks don't know what this is going to cost them. All they know is this is going to be expensive. I don't know who's going to pay for it. Might be
Right.
me, but it's going to be expensive one way or the other. So they may search and click and land on your beautiful website and decide, nah, there's too much risk here. I'm going to DIY this.
Yeah. That fancy website might look expensive to some people. That really flashy big. If you show buildings with water up, 6 feet and walls collapse, they might say, and I've always said
Yeah.
this about website. If you show those images, small jobs and medium size, they won't relate to that, and they'll say, well, they're too big for me. I don't need something that drastic or heavy. But what we're talking about is these are mindsets of the public, which most everyone deals with the public, they call slumps, but they're not related to things like John said. The summer is slow, the weather. We could talk about another thing, but I want to say another thing that I'm hearing a lot about, John, and I think this happens through cycles every couple of years, maybe not as specific as election years, but carriers, insurance companies, which we rely on as part of our ecosystem because that's how a lot of homeowners or business owners are going to pay for the damages they have. Those entities and those stakeholders go through economic cycles where they change their policy language, their limits and their rates, of course, and what they
Mm-hmm.
cover. You just mentioned they pull out of places, and they all. It's not just one. State Farm has their time, but they all seem to subscribe to the same podcast and they hire the same consultants and they kind of make the same moves. And you'll see it generally, but that is what I'm seeing in the first and second half of this year, or the first, second quarter of this year, first half of this year. I'm seeing a lot of policy and insurance structure change how people act or prepare or anything. Policy limits are usually the same, but exclusions happen. A lot more exclusions. They leave a state. Deductibles are certainly going up. That's how they're starting to get people to not make claims. Is I'm seeing a lot of 1 and 2% of home values. You get a six or we all know the value of homes has gone way up. So now all of a sudden you got a $600,000 or $700,000 house that used to be 300. Well, you're talking about a $12,000 deductible. Some people, again, you said it. They don't know what we do. They don't know what it's going to cost. So what I'll say, and we're going to get more into some solutions. You have to, in the world of slumps and dips and things, you need to sharpen your axe and expand your tool belt, and become better at selling yourself, selling the value when to the homeowner, to the consumer, to the business owner, the front line. You're not guaranteed a loss anymore. This insurance might or might not be a part of how they get reimbursed. So
Yeah.
those are some of the things that I saw in the first half of the year. A lot of people said leads were low. We were still going to leads, but we were doing a lot more estimates and a lot more tire kickers, and our conversion rates dipped. And I think that's what we saw a lot of.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard the same thing. Lot of estimates, or I'm hearing the same thing. A lot of estimates being written, and it's interesting because I've had a couple clients that are part of a franchise system say things like, "Well, I thought this business was recession proof." When I've laid out my argument for reasons why we're slow, and then I'll remind them, well, chances are you were told it was recession resistant because I was on the franchising side of things when that language changed. We realized we can't really say that. But the term recession resistant or recession proof, it's not fact, it's marketing. This is how franchisors sell a franchise to you through marketing. And so recession resistant, no, we're still part of the economy. And yes, we're in the disaster business. Yes, it kind of thrives on chaos. And yes, there's some consistency in chaos, but we're not immune. We are not immune from a bad economy or a worried general public or election cycles. We're just not immune.
John, I wrote something down here when I made notes about this topic. And recession proof was one of was one of the terms that we hear a lot, and it is recession resistant to a certain degree. And I was sitting here thinking, what business might actually be recession proof that doesn't have slumps? And the one I came up with was drug cartels. Um, Business is always good, and I would say the worse the economy, the better their business might actually be. They might have spikes around the holidays, around stressful times, election or whatever, but their dips are not dips in the way where things go crickets. They just aren't experiencing that. So I know it's a pretty touchy thing to talk about. And I'm certainly not making light of drug use and that epidemic and pandemic that we have, but we are not. It's a send a point home is everyone. We need to have products and services that people will trade their money for, and if they're not able or
Mm-hmm.
desiring to let go of their money, it doesn't matter what you sell. No matter, and John will say this, and I will say this. I talk to people all the time that absolutely are in chaos, turmoil, and they have the money and maybe even the solution to take the next step, whether it's us or somebody else to fix it, but they don't. They suffer in silence. They stay stuck just because of that scarcity mindset. So these things all play into it. And I know we're jumping around a little bit, John, but I think these are all probably trying to get people to relate and see what we're talking about.
It's a good segue into self-infliction
Hmm.
of how some restorers bring this upon themselves. And here's the argument I'll make. And this is not I'm not throwing stones here. It, what stones, glass houses, something like that. Um, Here's what I've observed. I talk to restorers every single day. I've talked to thousands upon thousands upon thousands of restorers over the last 15 years. And I've said many, many times, I don't care if you're a $500,000 a year company or $150 million a year company. You have all the same problems. The 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 scale is quite a bit different as you go up in revenue, but the problems are exactly the same. What I see a lot of is that restorer finds himself in some sort of slump. And that can be an economical slump, that can be a labor slump. I've seen obviously one of the biggest issues in this industry is labor, consistent, trustworthy labor that will go out and perform this work. That has never changed. In the 15 years I've been looking at it, nothing has changed in that respect. You can complain about Zoomers and this and that. It has always been the same.
Yeah.
Owners complain about labor, but the scale never changes. But what I see some of the smaller companies doing is they find themselves in some sort of typically economic slump, and then they look at what am I spending money on, and I've got to axe those things. And inevitably, it's the things that make them money, that truly make them money, the advertising, the marketing. They cut that out thinking I can't afford that while still holding on to that $1,200 a month truck payment. Because the truck is tangible, they can justify in their mind, this makes me money. I can't trade this in, this lifted F350 Platinum King Ranch. I've got to keep that because it makes me money, when in reality, that is a rapidly depreciating asset. It doesn't make you money. It
It's
looks
overhead.
great. You
It's
feel great
overhead.
driving it.
It's
Absolutely, it's overhead.
it's
But
like nice furniture in the lobby. It feels great, but it's not giving you a return on any money. And yeah,
correct, it's a depreciating asset. But they'll cut that advertising program and they'll think immediately, okay, I've saved this money per month. And for some companies, that's a lot of money. That's six, seven, $8,000 a month they're saving. But the problem is they're not thinking ahead 6 weeks, 12 weeks, 20 weeks, 52 weeks. They're not thinking that far ahead, because if you crimp that hose today, that's going to have an impact down the line. That's where I see huge self-infliction. Every July we have attrition without fail. Some years in our early days it hurt. It hurt real bad. But I have come to anticipate we will have a percentage of attrition every single July. And this
yeah.
year it was higher than it normally is. Now, funny enough, within 2 weeks of that attrition, we onboarded exactly the number of clients that we lost. Those are two different mindsets working. It's not that the group that we replaced that group that we lost with has a whole bunch of money. They're feeling the same pain as everybody else, but they know I have got to do something and I've got to do it right now. The other folks, there was an element of fear. There was obviously cash flow issues, and they sort of a knee-jerk slam on the brake reaction of we got to cut this thing off. And unfortunately, if we don't have a great storm season or storms across the U.S. to compensate the business that they're going to be losing, they're going to be really, really struggling going into November and December, which again, very, very slow months. Thanksgiving and Christmas. It is, for most companies, crickets. For those, probably a week prior, week of, week after, we have a slowdown during those months. Occasionally something great will come up, but that happens every single year. So this is a game of sort of like spinning plates in the air. And what those companies are going to find is November and December, they're going to be really, really hurting because they cut out what makes them money in the fall.
John, I correct me if I'm wrong, because digital SEO, those that world is certainly your bailiwick. Just stopping and pausing your digital, whatever those are, SEO, SEM, that has an immediate effect, but it's not like, I think I have some people that say, well, I've been doing it for 2 or 3 years. It should organically keep me going. But the way the algorithms work and the way that the competition works is once you start to dip and you don't maintain, the starting back up it is expensive and a lot of energy. Is that an accurate assessment that there's a momentum factor in digital marketing?
Yeah, with paid advertising, it's a light switch. It's off
Yeah,
or on. There's
yeah,
no in between, and you can be on for a year straight. You're not,
yeah,
and arguments can be made about quality scores and cost
yeah,
per click and stuff like that. But, I turn that off. It's off. You
yeah,
disappear. You don't show up at the top of Google anymore. With SEO, there is a if there's good SEO happening on that website, you will main and you have earned those rankings, page one, number two, something like that. That can be sustained for a short amount of time. But
yeah.
what July 2022 proved is that all Google has to do is punch a couple buttons, and your site basically doesn't exist on Google anymore. Um, the changes they made to search in July of 2022 knocked hundreds and hundreds of thousands of websites off of page one, page two, page three, page 10 of Google overnight. It happened from ServPro down. ServPro, to their credit, came back very quickly. Within a couple of weeks, they had restored a lot of those rankings they lost. Um, but a lot of guys who were just like, "Oh yeah, SD doesn't work anymore. I'm not. Why would I pay for this?" Their sites don't appear anymore unless they bring in that specialist to go and make sure that effort's being done on a regular basis. So it's sort of a yes and no. Paid ads, it's a light switch. SEO, I guess the best thing would be it's kind of like your truck. If you don't maintain it, eventually it's going to break down. It is the nature of things. Second law of thermodynamics. So I look at the website as this is an incredibly valuable asset that doesn't actually depreciate, unlike your truck,
Yeah.
and you have to be maintaining it on a monthly basis.
Here's what I'll use with your truck analysis, and I think it relates to business. Your truck, if you're using or your car, is always breaking down. It's always heading towards fault or breaking down. Your business too.
Mm-hmm.
It's only the maintenance. It's only the upkeep or the strategic decisions that keep. It's automatically declining in value, in wear and tear, or whatever you want to call it to make this comparison. The truck is always its pistons are high temperature. You're on the road. You're a lot of bearing issues. It's always happening. It's only the maintenance. It's only the understanding that this is the thing that gets me to where I need to go. Your business is the same way. It doesn't have an autopilot. It doesn't have a debt forgiveness mode where you just say, I'm broke. Please do your part to keep going. Now, the stronger your company is, the
Mm-hmm.
more you've got systems. You can obviously uh, offset that. But the mindset is your business will always have chaos. If you know that there will always be conflict, and if I am armored up, and if I am, or my team has a rotation of people who are always watching the most important things, slumps are going to happen. It's inevitable. You've already said that. You've made that point clear, and I think most people watching would 100% agree. I will tell you, John, and what I want to also bring into this digital marketing, investing in training of your employees, those kinds of things don't need to go away when you're slow. Because when you need them back, when you need them the most to be trained, and you do have business again, you're fighting a different problem. So this is where letting off the gas causes a whole smorgasbord of issues.
Yeah.
I will tell you in my experience, John, and this is in my business, my slumps, my dips and P&Ls often can be traced back to decisions months ago. Um, I think one of the
Mm-hmm.
worst things that can happen in a surge of P&L, surge of accrual or income, is we spend more money. Trucks. I didn't. King Ranch Platinum. Can you buy a truck with both? I mean, let's
I
something,
don't know. I don't.
but it's you go out and get the Raptor.
I drive a Ram, so
Me too. I
yeah.
drive a old truck, but a Raptor or a Cybertruck, great. But you know that 6 months from now we're going to have a slump, and how would you feel better if you had some of that? Maybe I can still drive my 2017 truck that still absolutely does great and gets great gas mileage and blah, blah, blah. I know that the guy across town's got one bigger now and I want to compare, but he's going to have the slump too, or she's going to have the slump too. There's something to say. I mean, again, you're running a business. This is not a popularity contest. This is it. But that's the kind of what you can do to save it. But slumps come in economic as well as energy. If you get into a slump, your energy goes down, you start making worse decisions and stuff like that. So that's probably something we could talk about. But what you're saying, John, I do watch it all the time. Clark, we're going to pause you guys. We're kind of in a dip right now. It's like, okay, well, isn't this? I'm fine. I'll support your decision. We're always going to be here when you need us. But I'll tell you that you're going to be inclined to still need to call because challenges are still there that you might need counsel or help with to get over, and it might
Mm-hmm.
just resolve the dip that you're in. But we know a business is a baby, it's emotional, and there are a lot of factors tied to it. And sometimes our decisions to hire people for that surge, area wide flood, tornado, we hired two or three or five people. But when that storm cleared out and the dust is settled, now we've got overhead. So sometimes those decisions create
Yeah.
these self inflicted slumps.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say before I want to talk, I want to give good news. I want to talk about how we can
Yes.
prevent these. But
Yes.
I speak from personal experience and literally with the truck analogy because I'm the guy. 2019 was our best year yet. So what did I do? I replaced the 20-year-old Toyota Camry that I had driven. I've had multiple Toyota Camrys in my life. I used to commute 500 miles a week. They're a great commuter car. They're not good to look at. They're not really fun to drive, but they get you from A to B. And I'd always owned cheap used cars, usually Japanese. And in 2019, I decided, and really, my accountant absolutely helped me make this decision: buy a new truck. And so, what did I do? October of 2019, I bought a new truck. I had no idea what was 6 months or 5 months in the future. I still own that truck. I love that truck. I will own that truck till the tires fall off,
I love that truck too,
because it
by the
was
way.
the first time, and I know
I
you
love
do. I was looking at it the other day, thinking about how when you were visiting, you drove it and you were like, I like this thing, and it made me feel good. Um, but I'm the guy that did that too. So I speak from experience with the. I don't know if you can buy a King Ranch and Platinum, but anyway, it's a Ford joke. Um, let's talk about how we now prevent these things, or if not prevent, guard against these things. And I've got some ideas, but I want to hear your ideas.
Well, this is a timely conversation because I am, without spilling the whole beans or trying to pretend like I'm promoting something, I'm creating our next program, our next big premier course that's going to catapult, kind of get us to our mission, which is to create a more professional industry. And this course program is around building up value driven or high value professionals. Like, and that comes with character. It's a
Hmm.
whole system: character, business strategy, messaging, leadership, et cetera, et cetera. And this is not just hyperbole. It's not just talking. This is going to be some frameworks, and one of them is I have a business model of your business is like an airplane, and I've explained this in a lot of speeches and conferences. It'll be the first time that I'll have this in recording, but the parts of the airplane represent parts of your business. And short version, the body is your overhead. The wings are your products and services. The engines on both right and left are marketing. They all have, there's a meaning behind all this. It ties it together. The leadership's in the cockpit so that you can see where you're going. But if you have a team of people who think about your business in ways of it and don't, that expenses and growing overhead is bad. It's a bad, bad, bad thing to do, and it should be avoided at all costs. Which means if I'm going to buy something, shouldn't it have a return? Shouldn't it, if I'm going to spend $20,000 on a marketing thing, I would expect someone on my team to show me how we're going to make 200,000 off of it. That's a smart decision that's going to
Hmm.
help with a slump in the future. And buying. Everybody's going to know what kind of trucks we drive now, John. I drive an '07 FJ Cruiser. I love it. It's I just crossed 250,000 miles. It's my 12th Toyota, but I'm like you. I don't drive 500 a week, but I drive to and from. I enjoy it, but I do know that I have a team that I want to pay better than the market usually gives. I want
Yeah.
to make sure that we have the tools that we need to make sure that everybody can do their job. And if I was driving, if I strapped our company and myself with needing to bloat to buy things like and I literally just saw a new truck this week that just came out that I'm like, well, now it's going to be difficult for me to not think about that. But the ability, what I have it's the new Land Cruiser. The 2024 Land Cruiser is
Yeah.
for the first time in years.
I
But
know what you're talking about.
for not having car payments, I have freed up 800 to 1500, whatever, a month to put that into the pockets of people who I am hoping will help me take this to where we all have more later. And it's a strategy, it's a strategic
Yeah.
mindset,
Yeah.
and it's hard. But I will tell you, when we get tight, when you have a slump, when you, Mr. Restorer, have a slump, and you actually pause us or fire us or don't pay attention to anything that we do, and we have a dip in revenue, I'm glad I drive an old truck at that time.
Yeah.
Maybe when I'm at a conference and everybody's got Raptors and King Ranches, maybe I'm maybe a little envious. But when it means the most, and it's I'm glad for it. So I'm not saying everyone live in squalor, but just make sure that you are. If you can afford a Raptor, have a Raptor. If it's maybe come up with a percentage point. If it doesn't make a difference to your business, great. But if it's hurting your airplane, if it's risking bringing the plane down because of the weight and the consumption of fuel or whatever, the analogies go on and on about this course, but those will it's possible. And a lot of the guys that you see that are like not complaining about slumps and they're just like going through it, they make these decisions and they are frugal, they're
Hmm.
smart about it and stuff like that. So that's just a little bit about the truck or something like it.
Well, yeah. When I started my company in 2013, the intention was to solve what I believed was the biggest problem restorers face, which is making the phone ring. I
Mm-hmm.
literally have a giant canvas next to me that says "Keep calm and make the phone ring." It's one of our marketing pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have learned that is not the single greatest problem a restorer has. In almost every case, it boils down to leadership. That the restorer has not developed the leadership skills necessary to run a profitable and thriving business. And I know that's going to offend some egos. It shouldn't. That should be, look, one man's opinion, but it's one man that talks to more restorers than anyone listening does. Um, you know, present company excluded. I talk to restorers. I talk to a lot of different personalities at a lot of different stages of life, um, with varying degrees of success. And the thing that I find that they have in common every single time is the good leaders survive and thrive, and the bad leaders don't. It's real simple. We have a leadership crisis in this industry.
Can you bullet
Yes,
point out?
frugality. Go ahead.
Sorry, John. Can you?
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to hear your ideas. Maybe 1 to 2 bullet points, three. What what would you say are leadership is a big topic, and I think it's misunderstood. I think everybody watches Matthew McConaughey on Instagram and feels like he's talking about leadership. Tell me what you think leadership prowess, leadership means to a company. What are I have some. I'm sure they're going to be the same as yours, but just for those listening at home, if they want to dial into what am I a leader? Am I doing these things well? What are those things to you?
Um, so I, the way I lead and what I see, and this is something that I have tried to emulate, and I'm by no means I'm not 10 out of 10 on this. I always responded to servant leaders. I had a whole bunch of different jobs in my 20s. Uh, all over the place, but nearly a dozen jobs in my 20s. And I had great leaders, and I had truly awful, like villain archetype type leaders. Um, the good leaders I worked under, all servant leaders, actually cared about me and showed that in not only their own work ethic that they wanted to be emulated, how they engaged with me, just the example they set. That servant leader and that really just
Yeah.
creating an avatar of this is what it should look like. Now do what I'm doing. That was the leader I responded to, and so that's what I've tried to do with my kids. It's what I try to do with employees. It's what I've done as a manager or try to do as a manager. And believe me, I've had plenty of shortcomings in just upper management. But in talking with restorers now that I know are really succeeding, their their employee base would probably take a bullet for a lot of these guys
Yeah.
because they have built that level of respect and loyalty with their staff, and it's through setting an example, being that servant leader, and really just investing in their people. Not just financially, but that is a part of it.
Yeah.
Cheap bosses with their employees don't tend to keep employees very long. A client, an off and on client that we've had recently came back to us and then immediately had to pause services because he was having a labor issue, not the first labor issue, one of probably half a dozen periods of having labor issues in his, at least in his time with us. And there's a point where I'm thinking, maybe it's you. Maybe it's not the county you're in or the part of the country you're in or the people around you. Maybe it's you because you keep having this exact problem over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And while this guy is incredibly talented in multiple different ways, he might just be a really bad leader. And that is driving people away or attracting the worst types of people to his system.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I think it could be boiled down to leadership.
I think for me, I'll give you my what I've developed over the years has obviously changed and models have changed, and I think I'm far better. Like my parents aren't alive, but they would look at me now as opposed to when I was in the 20s and stuff. That they're like, wow, you've really come a long way. I think leadership is being clear. You've got to have clarity on what we're trying to do. It's great to have big, fancy, noble personas, but it's does someone know how to help us get to where we all kind of want to go, or you've attracted a group of people that want to go to a certain amount. So I think clarifying a mission, a cause or a theme or a why, if you will, I think that's important because if you don't know
Mm-hmm.
where you're going, you'll end up doing everything and you confuse everybody and you kind of lose trust and confidence in people. I think being able to know and having the power to do what you have to do, even if it's hard decisions. I think making staff cuts. You might like the people, you might have good memories with them, but A, are they performing? And B, are we performing as a company? Will this sink our ship? Do I want to sink the whole ship because I'm keeping my cousin aboard? Or do I need to make the hard decisions because that's what
Yeah.
everyone expects me to do? So that to me is leadership. And then lastly is back to yours, and this all leads to slumps because if you're doing these things, I think that you can get through the things is being a servant leader, but also do what you do when no one's watching, choosing to not have your
Yeah.
name in lights and not needing a billboard for what you did, and just doing it when and consistently. And I think that is when people start to say, so and so, my boss, my leader, the pastor, best friend, just is so dadgum consistent about always trying to do the best thing, not always doing the best thing, but at least attempting to. And I think those to me make me a leader. And then lastly, a very, very common phrase is smooth seas don't make good sailors, rough seas do. If you are a good leader in all of the categories
Yeah.
that you expressed or I did, we're going to have a slump. We're going to have turmoil. We're going to have a pandemic. But this confidence that starts at leadership or throughout all of your middle managers, if there is a general aura of we're going to get through that, you do. You always do. You always say, what was I so freaked out about? We made it through because we always do. And I think that is something that emits, comes from your pores of leadership that leads to, because you're going to have them. If you start a business and you think this is going to be, it's all my dreams are going to come true. It's true. Your dreams could come true, but you're going to have a lot of scars on the way. Be prepared for that. So I know we said we would talk about positive things, and that is positive. To know that you can get through some
Yeah.
bad shit is very, very powerful, and it helps when they come for them to be overcoming. So like that. Yeah, yeah. Those are my very granular examples of, to me, leadership. Like, you're 100% right. If you're driving a King Ranch and everybody else in your company is in a car that breaks down all the time, there's something wrong there, that you're not supporting them and you're not sharing the wealth and the vision with them. So I would say I
Yeah.
100% agree with you.
Well, I wrote down smooth seas don't make good sailors. There's probably a more antique way of saying that. I'll have to look it up. But it's funny. I respond to sea analogies. I had a couple of years ago got a tattoo, and it's two clipper ships. It's a mirror image. The ship on the top of the tattoo, on the top of my arm, is the sun is behind it. The rays are beautiful. It's smooth seas. The sails are full, and then the ship at the bottom, the mirror image of the ship, has a broken mast. The sails are torn. The sea is it's dark out. It's a stormy night. There's lightning everywhere, and what separates those two ships is a banner that says "Come what may," because
Hmm.
it has become sort of a, I don't know, a mantra, a saying that I have. You're going to go through incredibly hard times, and so I
Yeah.
think that good leader says, "Come what may."
Come
Like,
on,
we're
man.
going to get through this. Smooth seas, stormy seas. We're going to get through this. So let's
I
move
want
on
to
to those more positive
let me let
aspects and
me
real
let me tag
practical.
on
Yeah.
let me tag on one more thing, John, to that mindset, that whole story you just said, come what
Hmm.
may. If you have done the work, if you know that, if you've been through some storms, you've learned your lessons, and this, you might not know this, or you might not even realize it, but you could begin to look forward to rough seas and slumps, because to me, anytime there's been a market shift or a market disruption, those that are stable and strong, that weather through it, are still there after a quarter or a half of the competition has didn't make it, and they're gone, and you're
Yeah.
now left in a better position on the other side. So if you really, really, really wanted to look at it, that, do the work when you're busy, pretend it's always going to be a slump,
Yeah.
which there will be, and then you will have a competitive advantage, a unique persona in the market, saying, "You guys just don't quit. You guys just don't stop, and you're there no matter what we go through." It's consistency builds trust, which people
Yeah.
buy trust. So we could move on now, but I think that's something that I want people, again, inspirational. I want people to just to admit that conflict's going to happen, but you have some control over it, self-inflicted or not. So go ahead, John.
So on the solution side of things,
Hmm.
obviously, it's something I've said for years, and I think it's a fair statement. Again, because I've seen it time and time again. Restorers, to generalize, restorers seem to be poor cash managers. They seem to run their business out of their bank account. If the bank account is over a certain arbitrary number, a number that they've created in their mind, business is good. And when it falls below that arbitrary, almost imaginary line, suddenly business is not good. And then they react to business being not good. They can't read a P&L. There is no savings. There's no, there's generally one, two, or three accounts. There's not accounts with different purposes, like separating payroll, operating, general, savings, etc. Um, They're not doing those things. So that's kind of like the prerequisites. One of our clients who has been around a long time, decades of experience, um, they knew going into 2024 it's going to be spicy. He just knew because he's done it before. He's survived recessions and election years and this, that, and the other, and so they made sure their storehouses were full. They had plenty of cash in the bank. Now, they happened to have one of their best Januaries on record, but he wasn't counting on that. He didn't know that going into January. It just happened to be how it worked out. But he had a phenomenal, really first quarter. But he already had that cash cushion, knowing, well, it sounds like 2024 is going to be a little rocky, so I better be prepared. So the cash aspect, that's a solution that unfortunately we didn't film this back in April or March or last year. But the cash reserve aspect is crucial. What are your thoughts on that, and what are some of the other solutions you've pinpointed? And I've got a few more, but I want to hear from
No,
you.
as far as cash flow, that's 100%. I mean, most businesses fail not because they don't do good work. It's not because their customers aren't happy. It's because of cash flow. That is true probably for generations. But that's not easy. Again, I go back to college, higher education, high school certainly um, doesn't teach you that. And I don't know many people, unless those
Yeah.
parents that are really dialed into Dave Ramsey or some kind of financial, they don't teach kids that. You don't learn that until you go through it. I have a system I would love to share with anybody. It's a multiple bank accounts. It's a very analog way to do it, but it's you know the thing is knowing what you have. You fall in love with having a bunch of checks that just came from a surge you had 2.5 months ago, and now you think I have this money to spend. But you have your own poster on your wall.
Yeah.
I have one of mine that says, "Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity." I don't care what you make. I mean, I care what you keep. That's it. You can sell $20 million, but if you only can keep 2% and you need 10 to grow, what have you really done except for wear yourself out? So I would say that cash flow is important, and I would say recognize my input. And I'll tell you how this relates to me is if you're a one trick pony, if you just do water damage and you don't diversify into mold or other things, is
Yep.
that's going to be seasonal. I think you need to consider adding other services that complement the one you have. I am a
Yeah.
big fan of doing one thing or at least one main thing. I don't think you should have a restoration company and a pharmaceutical company and a car wash. I think those are distracting, confusing, and everything. But I think if you do water damage, you do mold, if you bring in some crawl space encapsulation, maybe that's a good cash business. That's something that can be scheduled out. People need it. It's seasonal to a degree, but people do it in the cold, but it still has to do with the home. The same buyer still uses these things. I think having a strategy with your team saying, how can we insulate, knowing that there will be seasonal periodical slumps, that we have something else that's a light switch sometimes, turn it off, turn it on, that doesn't matter. But that would be one thing. And John, the last thing, and I know you have a lot and you're probably going to get in some other ones. I should get a tattoo that tells people get third party financing options in your company. Make it easier for your consumer. Especially, we talked earlier about in the slow times, you're giving more estimates. If you give them options of the things that they need to do, but it doesn't look like a one big
Yeah.
price, I have had so much success over using that in my tool belt. Like, listen, I know this would be tough. It's a $12,000 thing, but here's an option where it's 250 a month. Everyone can afford 250 a month as opposed to that. So those are some these are we're talking about tools to deliver there. But John, let me tell you my background, but all of my business, but especially disaster. It was almost all commercial. You mentioned that heavily,
Hmm.
heavily season driven. Some companies rely on hurricanes only. Then find out, wow, sometimes Mother Nature and Jim Cantori don't have hurricanes, so they're wanting. And I think that's where you have to diversify, still stay the service provider that does that kind of work, but maybe not just hurricane and fire season. Maybe there's other commercial opportunities you
Yeah.
can have. So I would say those are a way to insulate some of those things.
I totally agree on diversifying services. It's interesting. Fewer and fewer companies are doing mold. Most of them still have the certs. They've got the, you know, the equipment, the chemicals, the containment, but very few are doing them. And I get it. Insurers are not paying for mold, but customers are still buying it. We have currently one mold only company. I mean, they are now diversifying, but that's all they do,
Yeah.
and that's all they've done for years and years and years. So
Mold
mold's
is
not
year
a
round. No, it's not seasonal. It's year round,
yeah
and it's
yeah.
still relevant.
It's
I wrote
it's
I made a post, John, this week. I don't know if you're in our private community RBA, but my wife and daughter work for a food chain, excuse me, a grocery store, and a young man that had left there a month ago, he died earlier this week after a 3 week issue with exposure to mold, mycotoxosis, had
my
asthma. He was
goodness.
predisposed, but he's 29 years old. And, you know, if you're good at mold, if you have the certs and you understand the importance, keep good at explaining to people and growing trust and saying, no mold is good. It's like cancer. I mean, so you can have a little bit of cancer, but you're probably going to get it
Yeah.
treated. If you have a little bit of mold, it probably doesn't cost much to take care of it. But the worse it gets, the more it impacts you. And yes, I believe in those niches. Mold only, uh, bio only. There are a lot of pack outs only. There are a lot of people that
hmm
are in those spaces, but they seem to stop marketing to other people that need what they do. They don't do it, and then they start darting into
Yeah.
other things and don't really become good at anything and just okay at everything. So that's my niche complaint to
Yeah.
rant.
Yeah. I know. I agree. I do think so. There's kind of two ways to diversify well, and it's staying within the umbrella of restoration. So if you're a water damage company, add things like mold, um, crawl space, and that's obviously regional. In the West, it's a lot of air ducts. That's how they can you know get another service, especially due to the wildfires that California has almost perpetually throughout the year. Um, I mentioned bio hoarding cleanup. That's one that's commonly overlooked. The thing with hoarding is it is usually um, paid for, can be paid for by the insurance company, but there is usually a big motive behind it to get it paid for, to get the problem solved, and it tends to be the adult children of the hoarders. You don't have to make any capital investment to get into hoarding because you have everything you need on your trucks already, and you have probably the agreements in place for the dumpster side of things. So those are good. Under the restoration umbrella, those are great add-on services. Or you can take it was OP Alvarez from Restoration Mastery
Hmm.
who first said, own the home curb to fence. So if they invite you into the home once for that water damage, why aren't you leaving as part of their risk management team? So if there's a roofing issue a year from then, you're not going to go and do the roofing repair or the replacement, but you have a network that you can call on. And yes, you're going to get a couple points off of that, but it's the fact that they called you because they know you're the guy to call when something goes wrong in the home. So you now become just, again, part of the risk management team. For OP, who is sort of the restorer to the stars, I think I don't think, that has worked really, really well for OP. Um, another thing that that I've really talked about for over a decade is if you never want to pay for restoration, especially water damage leads ever again, just acquire a plumbing company. But
Mm.
become your own plumber referral system by acquiring a plumbing company. And there's many different ways to do that. And I've had this conversation with many people over the years. I've seen it work. I've seen different models of that work. But what a way to cross train your staff and keep constant work coming in. Oh, and cash coming in because you've now acquired a plumbing company.
Yeah. I love that model, and that's a very common trend in our industry right now. We're seeing a lot of people uh, uh, merge with some bolt-on plumbing or start their own. There's plus and minuses, just like everything. Go into it
Hmm.
strategically, and it can really take a lot of your attention, and it can also confuse your client. So let me ask you a question, John.
Yep.
How often do you get calls from colleagues, friends, people that found your stuff and want some advice? Just, you give free, I think we both say we give as much free advice sometimes as what we charge for. Um, they call you and they call me and say, Clark, I'm having this problem. I saw that you talked about it. You know why they call is because we have presented ourselves as experts in a thing that they need. You and your business as a
Right.
restorer, everybody in your community, your church, the Chamber of Commerce, the BNI should say, I don't know anything about floods and fires, but I do know who does. And it might not be a
Right.
sale, but it's an opportunity, it's a lead. They will always have you top of mind. And if you do good work, their social credibility goes up. So be the expert like John. Um, is it annoying to get a lot of calls from people? No, I love helping people. I have an inside thing. I'm sure you do. If it's once or twice, it'll develop into something or it'll be a referral. But if it's 26 times, there's some advantage being taken up, but become that person. Don't go
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
free mold jobs. But if someone says, I've got maybe a mold issue, I don't know what the hell's going on, say, don't worry about it. This is what I live for. Let me pop out there. I've got some time this afternoon. I won't charge you. I'll bring my tools. We'll see what we got. If it's a bigger deal, I'll shoot you straight. And if it's not, I'll let you know what you can do yourself. And then just you get a review out of that possibly. You certainly become top of mind with their cousins and their parents and their kids. And I think that's something that when we get into this insurance mindset, that we're thinking of the phone's going to ring, the Google call. You already know everybody you need to know to be successful. You just got to really focus on doing that. So that helps you through slumps when everybody else is
Hmm.
slow and not calling Google and not taking in landing pages. You'll be the first person they think of when they have something, and they bypass. You're the first notice of loss. You bypass all the other channels because they
Yeah.
come straight to you. That model exists. John knows people that live in that world that don't pay a dime much for any marketing, and they just get organic work. I do very
Yep.
little marketing other than organic, and I just work on reputation, and it's done well. But that is a way to help you through slumps.
Yeah. The subject matter expert way, being a known quantity. You're known as a subject matter expert. I get calls. In fact, I think two of our most recent clients found me from a group that I have not literally not been in 4 years. Like I haven't touched that group in 4 years, and they're still calling me because apparently I'm known as a subject matter expert in again, a couple things, and a couple things that are not very sophisticated, but I happen to know about them. But that has absolutely helped, and you're absolutely right. It's I've got the clients that have come to me for free and gotten advice two or three, maybe even four times, and I'm totally fine with that. And I also have the I have the guys that I can go back through text messages and emails, and it's like I've been talking to you for 6 years, and you're still not a client.
Yeah.
And in every single, I'm 100% of the time when they become a client after really abusing the relationship for 6, 7, or 8 years, um, always gone within a month, always without fail. That is how it works. I can pinpoint the day they're going to leave. Anyway,
John, I don't
so
know if
okay,
this
we've given quite a few solutions. Oh,
John,
go
I
ahead.
don't know if I don't know if this is gonna make the cut, but you know what I call those people? Assholes.
Well, I
So that, yeah,
yes,
vampires or
yes,
assholes. Let me tell you. Let me
yeah,
bolt on one more. Let me bolt on one more piece on the. If you are generous with your knowledge and you're giving and you're understanding that everyone starts somewhere, it opens doors. I'm sharing something right now that's my team doesn't even know. I'm having conversations, and I've had them before you have, with large organizations, and this happens to be a private equity type of organization that wants they latched onto, and they've asked their ownership groups and stuff, all the companies they've acquired, who can make us better, and they all say, this person or Clark at Restoration Fund. This entity now is engaging in us to put together a large package for us to be their in-house or their solution for all their property, all their assets and resources and companies that they bought, for generalized, systematic, consistent coaching, so that they're all operating the same way. That's an opportunity that came from 62 free calls, phone calls, texts, emails, and stuff like that.
Mm.
I want to tell everyone that there is a pot of gold in that. You just got to be willing to wait longer than the other guy to do it.
Yeah.
So go ahead, and John.
It's true. I have had those experiences as well.
Yeah.
And I think I have the same attitude about it. I just want to see people become better leaders and businesses becoming more self-sufficient. I want to see businesses, thrive. And it's not cliche. I happen to be in the restoration space, but more than anything, I am a lover of small businesses.
Yeah.
I believe small businesses build good communities and good cultures in those communities. Obviously, floats the economy. And when small businesses are hurting and small businesses have bad leaders, we find ourselves in a bit of a predicament from an
Yeah.
economical standpoint, from a culture standpoint. And so I'm just a tried and true believer in small businesses. I want to see them succeeding, and their owners being good leaders. But
I'm with you.
okay, we have
I think lemonade stands
yeah.
need to be. I think lemonade stands need to be supported. So go ahead and kick us off into our last segment to give these people watching that spent any time with us something good that we'll both chime into.
Well, I think just to summarize, slumps exist. I can point on a graph and show you that a slump is going to happen every single year. It shouldn't catch us off guard, and so much of the reason why I wanted to do this was because it seems to catch about 75% of our client base off guard every single year. It is just a kind of what happened reaction, and mark it on your calendar. In fact, I have a client that he knows when to schedule his vacation because he can look at historical data and go, slump. I know it's going to happen around this time. And so that's when he plans his big annual vacation. That's good leadership. That is someone who is a trained observer who can draw good conclusions and implement very well, who can execute very well. So they're going to happen. They don't have to be self-inflicted. That's the great news. That was a big chunk of the middle of what we talked about. But environmental slumps happen, so we know that. You can do a lot. You can implement a lot today that 6 months or 12 months from now, that next slump is not going to impact you as much as it did prior. And as you continue to implement those things into your business and into your life and become a better leader than you were yesterday, you can guard against the impacts of those slumps. And then we gave you a lot of solutions for how do I better safeguard my business? How do I get out of the silo of flood chasing? Because you're not a flood chaser, you're a restorer. So go restore things, and that's going to be things that aren't just impacted by water. Or you take that approach of that kind of holistic home approach of owning it curb to fence. We gave you some tactics. Not everything's going to work for every company. But I certainly think if we can get those, the viewers to at least acknowledge there's a slump coming. I'm just now leaving one that I had talked about since January and February of this year, because I talk about it every year. I talk to my clients all the time about 4 months from now, 6 months from now, 12 months from now. We have to be ready. So acknowledging that, knowing I'm going to go into 2025, understanding there will be a July and August slump, and that regionally I may have these little micro slumps happen. So preparing for those and trying my best to prevent the self-inflicted versions of those, and then looking at what can I implement in my business, what one thing, what one service can I implement into my business over the next 6 months that's going to protect me 12 months from now or 18 months from now. I think we've given everybody sort of a plan. First, to say it's not just you, it's not just it's not just you experiencing this. This is a nationwide thing. We've given them some data and some solutions and really practical things that they can implement. So I'm feeling good about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like the planning your vacations. We all know that December is slow, not only slow with leads, but guess what? Insurance companies and homeowners quit writing checks to pay you, so cash flow gets real tight. So, but we know that. I had that in my business
Yeah.
forever. Start making plans in September of how are we going to keep paddling through that. Like what do we
Yeah.
have right now that's wasteful? Make those decisions. Um, I would say I'm more of not more than John, but I focus a lot on usually most business owners that we're coaching, mentoring, they kind of know what to do in the bigger picture. What they don't know how to do is emotionally
Yeah.
handle. They don't. They're reactive and not proactive, and they don't
Yeah. Yeah.
internalize any fears, and they exude those externally with actions or even emotions. It kind of disrupts the team. But I would just say get control, know that this is one thing that everyone experiences, everyone shares, and that if you can make it through more of those, and it'll make more sense to you to do it. So that's I think everything that you added, and again, it's a big subject, but it's no secret to anybody. Just think that people need to know that identify, be strategic, be a good leader, because leaders will last.
You mentioned this new course that's coming out. Where can folks find that?
It's still in production, John. It's going to be a big 2025 thing. I think we'll start probably if I can
Okay.
finish it. Put together, for those watching at home, put together a course or a program is not just sitting in front of this computer screen and this camera and start rapping. There has to be, just like your business. There's a lot of sequences, a lot of things that have to lead towards a transformation. In our case, it has to solve a problem, but there have to be these pieces. So I'm in the middle of the rough outline, and then it will need to be created into a script or something
Okay.
that I can actually look at. So I would say it's 2025, but Toby tells me that Clark, you're irrationally optimistic. You're irrationally confident. I am producing and creating this thing right now, and I will tell you, I feel like this is going to be the best thing that I've ever done. I think I say that every time, but I think that to get to where we want to go, it's not more sales only. It's not the newest fan. It's to build the team, build the people, have a framework to where you're impervious, you're indelibly
Yeah.
stronger all the time. I think that is a fundamental piece that will support all the other challenges or a lot of the challenges we have, especially around growing junior leaders. Owners don't want to have another job. You don't buy a business to have a job. My business is around freedom, give you the life you want, build a business that fulfills you, but it also pays you to explore other opportunities because you're all creators, you're all entrepreneurs, and the more you can't grow and stay in one place, the more frustration you have, and that goes down to your team. I like to create tools that help you get to that next level, and they're not sexy, they're not popular, they're not on Mount Rushmore, but this one is going to be a high value professional, and what that means is to be viewed as from your own team internally and externally with referral partners and customers is like that guy Jon Grubb is something different. He's a unicorn. He makes a lot of great decisions. I want to know how I can work with him, do business with him, and then grow his business with him so that I reciprocally grow too. That's what this course is about. Look for it in 2025. Check out Restoration Advisors and get on our dang mailing list to get our weekly articles, blogs, tools, and you'll see something later when it is come out. You might get an early bird special. I'm going to have to get some beta peer users to go through the course and give me feedback, and then improve it. But I'd say 2025, John, is when we have it. But check out some of the ones we have. Thank you for the
Okay.
opportunity. But client onboarding is the one that we really are seeing the most use out of right now. How does that tie into slumps? Reach out to me and figure it out. So, but this is a good topic. I'm glad we did this
Yeah.
video, John. We have this conversation every year. Now we have something that we can send to people when we get the call saying, "Man, I'm
Yeah.
in a slump. Yeah, I got something for you. Here's a link."
Yeah. Let me echo everybody, every restorer watching should go through your client onboarding course. Um, I know that almost every challenge that I have in my business is due to my own poor client onboarding. It was a mistake that I made over and over and over again in the first couple of years, and I sort of learned to identify good clients for us and bad clients for us. And sometimes it's a personality thing. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's that client is just not a good client. But client onboarding, especially right now when people are very tight with their checkbooks or their bank accounts, that is at absolutely what every restorer should do. I'm looking forward to your high value professionals course. I'll absolutely take that.
Yeah.
And then talk about it, because yeah, your courses are fantastic, and that's something where if I'm a leader and I'm really taking this leadership thing, the CEO thing seriously, I'm going to earmark funds every year that go right back into my own development, as a leader.
Well, the value of a course that you take is that you get to relearn it yourself by teaching others, and you
Mm-hmm.
get to provide value to other people. And they don't have to pay for it unless they're paying you through your services. But what I love about knowledge education is it's so shareable, and it can extend on.
Yeah.
Client onboarding. I'll give you a data point. Our team really digs into data. So many of our clients, and I've got some real hard numbers, are seeing AR and receivable shrink to previously unbelievable amounts because the expectations have been set with the
Yeah.
customer, and what's about to happen, what to expect, and what their part is to play. If nothing else, if that's what you're looking to do, if you're just trying to shrink your receivables or improve your customers' experience so they'll give you more reviews or referrals, then that's fine. But just receivables is a tangible, cash-driven thing. And guess what, John? If you have receivables that are under control and within reason, the slumps don't hurt as much, because the thing that you said earlier, the cash flow is there.
Absolutely.
It solves a problem of another problem of another problem. And that's what you said. You got to stack your tools to contribute to a bigger outcome.
One of the biggest red flags that I look for in a prospect is if they say something to the effect of, "I'm waiting on a big check," it's not a client for me.
Yeah.
That is almost 100% of the time a client that will not last. And we only want clients that stay. It doesn't make any sense to keep a client on for 3 weeks. It's not our business model. But when they say that, it's a huge red flag for me.
Well, that's what
All
that's what
right,
good
so
client that's what
restoration
good client
advisors.
onboarding.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's what good client onboarding does, is
yeah.
it helps you extract the little nuance, the red flags things, and you might find out that this won't cost
Mm-hmm.
me as much if I don't do it. But yeah, you are restorationadvisors.com, unitedrestorers.com.
Yeah.
If you team up with John and I in any capacity, I have different levels for smaller and bigger engagements. Um, I think that we both could probably show you our referrals and references, and some very successful companies that have worked with John. We share some clients. We refer each other clients sometimes when we
Mm-hmm.
need it. But I will tell you, give us a try. Give John a try. If it's something you've never done, it's certainly time to try it out. And then the same for us. But this is why we are here to help. Like John said, small businesses ring my bell just like yours. So, but
Yeah.
I'll do this with you anytime.
Well, awesome.
You're on my
I
mount.
really appreciate the time.
You're on my Mount Rushmore, by the way. If I have Mount Rushmore restoration, you're on mine. On the left side. But yeah. But sorry, I interrupted you.
Well, You're on mine, and you know we have been fast friends and partners and kind of brothers for quite a while now, and I've enjoyed every moment of it. So thank you for
Yeah.
giving me the time and giving us your wisdom and experience. Um, and with that, we will shut her down.
Sayonara.